I've gotten a few requests to talk about Ahsoka, and by a few, I mean literally probably one of you replied to one of my Instagram stories asking if I was going to watch this show, and I'm watching it. A blanket disclaimer at the beginning of this. One, could be some minor spoilers, and two, I have watched such a insignificant amount of Rebels or in Clone Wars, so I blanket this review with the fact that if this show is working for you, I want to know about it. I want to start with the positives. One of the things that I think is so unique about this show, especially positioned amongst the rest of the Star Wars universe, is the lack of allegiance to either Jedi or Sith on the protagonist and antagonist side. We have these characters who, for one reason or another, do not completely align themselves with the organized religion that we have been so constantly fed throughout Star Wars. And here the lines are a little less cut and dry. Now, do I wish there was a little bit moral gray, a larger moral gray area going on? Of course I do. But at the end of the day, I do appreciate the fact that we're not necessarily having to abide by rules of Jedi Order or like being so hardcore Sith. The other thing I really love about the show thus far is getting to see the new planets. I feel like this is something a lot of jokes are made about Star Wars, but they do tend to really like a desert planet. And I really appreciate getting to see places like kind of the forest planet that we've been on for 2 episodes. And then this is a spoiler, so you can skip ahead, but the spiritual celestial plane that we've just kind of entered in the last episode, fascinating. This is a side of Star Wars that has never been dealt into in the live action movies or series thus far, and I think this is something that has been such a pivotal part of Star Wars, is the Force ghosts and the connection to the Force. It's super interesting, and I'm very intrigued for the next episode to see where it goes. However, that is probably the first time I have been so intrigued by the show that I'm actually looking forward to another episode. Let me tell you why. So one of the things that I feel is just my blanket opinion about this show, and again, you feel free to sound off below in the comments about your opinion. It would help the channel, but also I would love to get your thoughts, is that they're switching from animation to live action. No matter how cool or well developed something is in an animated form, no matter how long it has existed, when you switch to live action and you do not make certain changes, things can get a little cheesy a little fast. And the number one thing I am talking about here are Ahsoka's astronaut outfit when she goes into space and does her like flip cartwheel. I cannot be the only person that thought this was absolutely ridiculous, because what was this? This was just a cool shot. No! Like, this is something that, I'll be completely honest, if it happened in the Clone Wars, I would not have thought twice about it. And that's not to insinuate that the Clone Wars is not important or not serious. It just would have made a little more sense. Like, in the very first episode of the Clone Wars series that I've seen is Yoda doing all these crazy flips and tricks and stuff. And that's something that in a medium like animation, you can really make like fight sequences or tricks like that, Jedi tricks, look super cool. And again, could just be me, but it looked a little ridiculous. In live action, it just looked silly. I don't know if it was the costume or whatever, but it just took me out of it. I was screaming, laughing, and like shocked that this was happening in a Star Wars show. And this kind of goes on to other things. Like, I think this also goes with the fact that the show has such an overall serious tone, in the way that Rosario Dawson plays Ahsoka is a much more serious version of Ahsoka. And I know she's a lot older than she is in most of the Clone Wars series, but there's something about the fact that there's this really serious side. There is something about that doesn't work as well. And then we go to another further point, which is Star Wars has a crippling issue currently of making a show that literally has the character's name in the title and then making the show kind of more about somebody else. There's like 2 episodes of Book of Boba Fett, of the 6 episodes total, that are completely not about Boba Fett. They're completely about the Mandalorian and Grogu. And listen, here's the deal, right? I'm not saying that TV shows can't have singularly focused character-driven episodes. However, when you are doing it in a TV series that is basically a limited series that is titled after a specific character, it becomes a little bit confusing as a viewer. It feels like a cop-out. It feels like it's just weird. It feels like We didn't have enough story, actually. And I thought this was going to be a really cool show about Ahsoka's, like, distance from the Jedi. And yeah, I was excited to see the Rebels characters have their own live action debut. But now I feel like it's Sabine's Jedi coming of age story. And then somehow I feel like this is going to connect to the Mandalorian, and she's going to take the Darksaber back, and she's going to rule Mandalore, and it's actually going to be her that was the Mandalorian all along, because guess what? She's also the Jedi, and she's also the Mandalorian. And I'm not saying that I don't love a good team up, but I'm just confused. Like, who is the show about? I'm not saying I can't have these great side characters, but, like, I feel like the time's kind of 50-50 split between Sabine and Ahsoka at this point. It just feels like maybe you should have called the show Non-Allied Forces, or like Resistance to the Force, or Force-Led Resistance. I don't know, something to imply that all these characters have something to do with the Force, but they don't have like Jedi Sith affiliations. You know, something unaffiliated Force, something like that. And then to go further with this point, I am so tired of getting a show and having everyone tell me up front, the Jedi are gone. The Jedi are all gone. They're dead. They're lost. There's no more. And then all of a sudden in the show, basically everyone we know is Force sensitive and may not be a Sith or a Jedi. They're not a Jedi, but they have a lightsaber. But they are Force sensitive. And I'm just a little confused how everyone has this power. Here's the thing. All these things can go away, okay? A show doesn't have to be perfectly aesthetic to watch it and enjoy it. It's about the story. It's about the characters. It's the dialogue. It's the writing. And I am going to go on a limb here and say that I think that this show is suffering once again from the biggest issue in Hollywood right now, which is huge budgets, low time for development and production, and super rush scripts, and actors that may not even be able to give the performance that they feel they should be giving, or they feel is right, because they are under a huge IP super force that is just weighing down on them to do it a specific way. And I have seen Rosario Dawson in other things, and she has been wonderful, and I have seen the actress that plays Sabine, and she seems like a lovely woman in all her interviews, but they have no chemistry in terms of just like their lines are said, and then in the air, they hang there, and then they die. And it's just, I can't figure out if it's the writing, if it's the way they've been instructed to play the parts. It just, everything feels really one-dimensional, despite the fact that this is ultimately a story about a teacher and her student who are kind of like siblings, who are kind of like hate each other, have all this like unspoken stuff between them, who have both faced immense loss, and who both feel kind of conflicted about what forces in the universe and organizations to be aligned with. And that's a lot. That's a lot of good fodder for TV. And yet I don't feel it on screen. Again, if this show is working for you, I want to know about it. I want to know. Please tell me. I hope for nothing more than for this show to find its specific audiences. I want to know. I'm being genuinely serious. I sound like I'm being sarcastic, but please tell me if the show is working for you and if you like it. I would love to know about it. I would also love if you subscribe to the channel, but I understand that with kind of the hot takes that I've had today, you potentially may not want to, but that's okay. I talk about other things that are not necessarily Star Wars all the time that you might prefer. So think about that. I'll see you in my next video sometime soon, and thanks again for watching. May the Force be with you, because I don't think it's with Ahsoka right now. Okay, bye.